Who taught you what a person like you is allowed to become? Before you call yourself lazy, weak, inconsistent, or afraid, answer that. What rule makes retreat feel honest? What verdict turns surrender into appropriate behavior for someone with your name, your history, your place in the world? You know what to do. So why does ambition become dangerous when action is required? Why does money awaken guilt when you must name your price? Why does visibility feel like exposure instead of opportunity? Why does one missed day become permission to abandon your health? Why do you stand at the door of belonging and disqualify yourself before anyone else speaks? The application remains unsent. The price remains low. The first lapse ends the effort. Then you accuse your discipline as though accusation were explanation. It is not the behavior you condemn may be enforcing a rule you never consciously accepted, a rule about what people like you deserve, a rule about what happens when you are seen, a rule about whether effort leads to growth or humiliation. You may understand the plan and still retreat, because knowledge tells you what action makes sense, while identity tells you what action is permitted. Call this rule an inherited belief, a conclusion absorbed before it was consciously examined. That is not a diagnosis. It is not proof that every failure came from the past. It is not an excuse that releases you from responsibility. It is a proposition, and once you recognize it, responsibility begins. Origin does not establish truth. Recognition does not create change, and an unnamed rule keeps its authority by being obeyed without trial. So choose one recurring retreat. 1. The unfinished application, the reduced price, the abandoned routine. Hold it before you. Do not explain it away, and do not sentence yourself with it. We are going to name the rule beneath that behavior. Inspect the signature it leaves in your choices. Test whether it deserves authority. Replace its language with a credible standard of conduct, and produce immediate evidence against its command. Not fantasy. Evidence. You will not be asked to pretend certainty, declare guaranteed victory, or deny the record of your life. You will be asked to read that record more honestly and then add to it deliberately. Keep your chosen pattern in mind. Beneath the visible retreat is language, a sentence, perhaps spoken to you, perhaps implied, perhaps repeated so long that it now sounds like your own voice. Do not change that sentence yet. Do not soften it. First, we must discover who taught it to speak as I. Now listen beneath the retreat you chose. What sentence appears in the instant before you delay, conceal, withdraw, or surrender? Not the explanation you offer afterward, not the polished reason, the sentence that arrives first, the one that says, do not risk that, do not be seen. That is not for someone like you. A remembered statement is something you can locate in the past. An internalized conclusion is different. It has lost the name of its speaker. It no longer sounds like advice received. It sounds like identity discovered. You repeat it without quotation marks. You obey it without asking who gave it authority. Perhaps the warning was simple. Do not draw attention to yourself. In one setting, that warning may have served protection, peace, or conformity. But repeated long enough, it can expand. Do not draw attention becomes visibility is dangerous. Visibility is dangerous becomes people like me should remain unnoticed. Years later, no one needs to repeat the warning. It appears as hesitation before applying, reluctance to lead, or resistance to placing your work before the public. The voice has vanished. The command remains. Do not rush to blame. Not every limiting belief was handed to you by another person, and memory is not a perfect record. But conduct an honest inventory. What was said at home about ambition, money, error, success, and belonging? What did school reward or punish? What did work teach you about speaking, asking, leading, or being visible? What did your community imply about those who rose, changed, or stood apart? What conclusion did you draw from an earlier failure and then carry forward as permanent law? Some rules began as protection. Some began as demands for conformity. Some were merely another person's interpretation of risk. delivered with such certainty that you mistook their fear for your future. Understand the distinction. Origin can explain how a sentence gained authority. It cannot prove that the sentence deserves it. Now write. Use the recurring retreat you selected and complete one of these statements without making it respectable. People like me do not. Or if I succeed, then finish it plainly. Name the forbidden behavior. Name the feared consequence. Name the identity verdict hidden inside it. People like me do not ask to be chosen, because rejection will expose what we are. Or, if I succeed, then I will become visible, judged, and separated from those whose acceptance I need. Your sentence may be different. It must be yours to observe, though it may not have been yours to choose. Do not revise it. Do not argue with it yet. Preserve the exact words. You have taken an invisible pressure and given it a form that can be examined. Now place that sentence beside your actual decisions. We are going to see where it has been converting language into action. Take the sentence exactly as you wrote it and follow it into one recent choice. Do not interpret. Reconstruct what appeared. What did the sentence say? What did you do next? What followed? There is a chain. Trigger, thought, action, result. An opportunity activates the inherited sentence. The sentence recommends protection. Protection produces a behavior. The behavior creates an outcome that appears to vindicate the sentence. Composite 1. An aspiring professional sees an opening and intends to apply. That is the trigger. Then the rule speaks. Rejection will reveal that you never belonged among serious candidates. That is the thought. The person postpones, revises endlessly, and misses the deadline. That is the action. Nothing changes, no opportunity is gained. That is the result. Later, the unchanged circumstances are presented as evidence. See, I am not someone who advances, but no rejection occurred. The rule predicted exclusion, recruited delay, and then used the absence created by delay as testimony for exclusion. Composite 2. A capable worker is asked to quote a price. The inherited sentence warns that a higher figure will invite scrutiny, criticism, or withdrawal. The worker lowers the price before anyone objects. Immediate tension falls. The work is accepted, but the return remains small. Resentment grows, and the low payment is later treated as a measure of value. Again, the belief did not discover the outcome. It helped arrange it. Composite 3. A person misses one day of a health routine. The rule declares that inconsistency proves incapacity. Instead of resuming the next day, the person abandons the effort. Weeks later, the abandoned routine seems to confirm the verdict. Yet the lapse did not create that record. The surrender did. Understand this. Belief-consistent behavior is not proof that the belief is true. A pattern can manufacture the very evidence it later cites in its defense. Now make a behavioral ledger. Record the last 3 moments when your selected rule influenced a choice. For each, write 4 short lines. What happened? The exact sentence that activated. What you observably did or did not do. What result followed. No motives you cannot verify. No character judgments. No revised wording. Facts first. Then add one final line. What did obedience give me immediately? Perhaps it reduced exposure. Perhaps it offered temporary safety, preserved belonging, or spared you the possibility of judgment. Name the reward without contempt. Protective behavior persists because, for a moment, it pays. But relief is not progress. The smaller pain avoided today may purchase the larger loss repeated tomorrow. Hold these 3 incidents beside the preserved sentence. You now possess more than a history of outcomes. You possess a map of how those outcomes were produced. The next question is unavoidable. Does repetition make this rule true or merely well rehearsed? Bring the behavioral ledger forward. These incidents are exhibits, not a sentence already decided. Now write the inherited rule exactly as preserved, in one clean line. No metaphor, no correction, no positive opposite. Let the claim stand where you can question it. Then classify it. Is it a fact, a prediction, a value, an instruction, or an identity verdict? This attempt was rejected is a fact. The next attempt will be rejected is a prediction. Rejection is unbearable is a value judgment. Do not try again is an instruction. I am not the kind of person who can succeed is an identity verdict. These are not interchangeable. A feeling may be real without being a forecast. An event may be factual without proving an identity. Now conduct the trial with 4 questions. What exactly does the rule claim? What observed evidence supports it? What observed evidence contradicts it? What behavior would test it without requiring blind faith? Be rigorous. If the supporting evidence includes past rejection, limited money, insufficient training, restricted time, or an actual mistake, record it. Reality does not need to be denied for authority to be challenged, but separate the event from the conclusion attached to it. A resource constraint may require a smaller plan. It does not prove permanent incapacity. A rejection may alter your next approach. It does not establish what you are forever permitted to become. Now demand counter evidence from your lived behavior. Where have you acted despite fear? Where have you improved through practice? Where did you achieve a partial result, recover from an error, learn a skill, ask for help, tolerate judgment, or remain present longer than the rule predicted? Do not dismiss the smaller exception because it fails to resemble final victory. An exception is evidence. Capacity shown in one setting may not guarantee success elsewhere, but it does challenge a total verdict. Inspect every absolute. Always, never. People like us, not the kind of person who. These words are signals for examination. They are not automatically false, but they carry a heavy burden. One contrary fact can expose how carelessly a limited experience became an unlimited command. Then design one low-risk test, not a dramatic leap, not proof of worth. Choose one observable act that the old rule discourages and that can produce new information without demanding certainty. Write the act down and retain it. You will use it later. Now render a provisional verdict. Unproven, overgeneralized, outdated, or useful only in a narrow setting. Do not force yourself to believe the opposite. Simply withdraw unquestioned obedience. Mark the sentence, received, not chosen. A rule repeated for years still owes you evidence. And when it cannot pay that debt, you may begin to feel the cost of everything it commanded you to surrender. Now look at the cost. Not in abstractions. In time surrendered, opportunities avoided, questions never asked, attempts postponed, boundaries softened, and recoveries abandoned before they began. The behavior ledger does not merely show what happened. It shows what obedience required. You are permitted to be angry. A borrowed sentence was allowed to speak with personal authority. It entered perhaps before you possessed the language, independence, or evidence to challenge it. Then it stood inside your decisions and issued commands in your own name. Do not minimize that. Do not decorate the loss with premature gratitude. What was forfeited mattered. But refuse the second evasion as firmly as the first. The person, group, environment, or experience that transmitted the rule cannot remain responsible for every decision you make after you recognize it. Origin explains arrival. It does not grant permanent permission. You may not have invited the sentence into your life, but once you can see it, test it, and observe its influence, its continuing authority becomes your responsibility. This is not blame. It is power returned. Anger can break allegiance. It can make you say, this rule is taken enough. Say it if it is true. Say it without apology, but understand the limit of protest. Resentment can reject an authority. It cannot govern a life. If you remain fixed upon who installed the rule, the past still determines where your attention goes, what your energy serves, and what your next action becomes. Use anger as a door. Pass through it. Do not furnish it and call it home. Take the exact inherited sentence you preserved. Do not cross it out. Do not claim it has vanished merely because you now oppose it. Its emotional pull may remain. Its old warning may still arrive at the familiar moment. Honesty requires no performance of instant freedom. Right beneath it, receives, not chosen. That label separates history from authorship. It says, this sentence reached me, it influenced me, it cost me, and I no longer confuse its familiarity with my consent. Now ask the decisive question, what will I enforce now that I can see what was enforcing me? Do not answer with rage alone. Not that as a refusal, not a standard. A revoked rule leaves an empty place, and an empty place will soon be occupied by habit unless you choose what belongs there. Leave the old sentence visible. Leave its label beneath it. Then draw one empty line beside them. That line is not for a grand promise or a flattering description. It is reserved for a rule you can obey in conduct under present conditions before confidence arrives. You have withdrawn authority. Now you must author what comes next. The empty line is waiting. What will you place upon it, a fantasy large enough to excite you, or a law clear enough to direct you? Choose carefully. The sentence you write now must survive contact with the very moment in which the old rule usually speaks. Do not write, I cannot fail. You can. Do not write, I am completely fearless. Fear may return before the ink is dry. Do not declare instant greatness, guaranteed success, or permanent confidence. Such claims demand evidence you do not possess and promise outcomes you do not control. When reality contradicts them, the inherited rule will seize the contradiction and call your attempt foolish. The strongest chosen belief does not predict victory. It governs conduct. Build yours from three parts: a chosen identity, a repeatable behavior, and a trigger condition. Who are you choosing to be? What will that person observably do? When will that behavior begin? For example, I am a person who submits worthy work before certainty arrives. The identity is chosen. The submission is repeatable. Uncertainty is the condition that activates the rule. Now apply the construction to the pattern you carried here. If the application has been delayed, do not promise acceptance. Choose to submit careful work by the stated time. If the price has been reduced from fear, do not guarantee approval. Choose to name a considered price before reacting to another person's judgment. If one lapse has ended the routine, do not claim perfect consistency. Choose to resume at the next available opportunity. This is agency without pretense. Take your inherited sentence and rewrite the command, not the facts. If money is limited, let the new rule permit a smaller step. If training is incomplete, let it require learning and an appropriate attempt. If rejection is possible, let rejection remain possible. Your law must be honest under discomfort, delay, imperfect performance, and an answer you did not want. Now test every word. Is it chosen, or does it merely sound admirable? Is it specific enough to guide a visible act? Is the required behavior within your influence? Can you prove obedience today? If any answer is no, revise. Remove always. Remove never. Remove the promised result. Remove every demand that depends upon another person selecting, approving, paying, applauding, or forgiving you. Keep what belongs to your conduct. Then write one short sentence. When this familiar fear appears, I am a person who takes the next honest, proportionate action before certainty arrives. Make it more specific if you can. Let it point directly toward the low-risk test you designed earlier. Do not ask whether the sentence feels natural yet. Ask whether it is true the moment you obey it. Credibility will not come from grandeur. It will come from correspondence between your words and your next act. Keep the sentence visible. You have written a law modest enough to believe and strong enough to follow. Now read it aloud. Read the two sentences side by side. First, the inherited rule, preserved exactly and marked received, not chosen. Beside it, the law you have written for your own conduct. One describes the command that shaped the pattern. The other names what you will do when that command returns. Now give the chosen voice a commanding form. Understand what speaking can and cannot do. Repetition does not make a sentence factual. Volume does not manufacture courage. Words do not compel the world to accept you, reward you, or remove uncertainty. You are not performing magic, and you are not trying to overpower doubt with noise. You are giving choice a cue. You are turning language into an executable order. Stand if you are able, or sit with deliberate composure. Place both feet where you can feel them supported. Let your hands become still. Do not rush. Do not chase intensity. Precision matters more than emotion, because this declaration must direct you even when emotion offers no assistance. It has 3 lines. First, revoke the authority you did not consciously grant. That rule was received, not chosen. Second, name the identity expressed through conduct. I am one who takes the next honest, proportionate action when familiar fear appears. Third, name what begins now. I prove it now by completing the low-risk test I have chosen. Make the second line specific to your law. Replace the general behavior with the conduct you can control. Make the third line exact. Name the retained test, not a vague intention. Include the first visible movement if necessary. Opening the document, preparing the message, entering the appointment, setting out what the next attempt requires. The action must be small enough to begin and real enough to count. Your declaration should now follow this form. That rule was received, not chosen. I am one who behavior when trigger. I prove it now by action. Speak at once, slowly. Let each line carry its proper weight. The first separates your history from your consent. The second appoints the standard you have chosen. The third places that standard under immediate examination. Do not repeat it until it becomes a chant that relieves you of acting. Do not admire the sentence. Do not use the force of the moment as a substitute for proof. A declaration opens a contract that only behavior can sign. The old rule may object before you finish. Let it object. Its return does not cancel your choice. It activates the conduct you named. The final line is therefore unfinished until movement begins. Words have appointed the new rule. They have not yet established its authority. Begin the named action now, before delay resumes its argument, before fear renegotiates the terms, before intention is mistaken for evidence. Move toward the smallest act capable of leaving an honest receipt. Do not leave the moment empty. Retrieve the low-risk test you designed during the trial. Look at it now. Can it begin where you are? If not, reduce the first step without removing its meaning. A proof action has 3 qualities. It is small enough to begin now. It is meaningful enough to contradict the old rule. It is observable enough to record without interpretation. You need not feel transformed while doing it. You need only perform the conduct your chosen identity requires. If the test concerns an application, complete its identifying details. If it concerns your value, send the considered pricing message. If the work itself cannot begin here, schedule the work session with a definite time and place. If the old pattern has governed your health, prepare the next nourishing meal. If progress depends upon a conversation, make the first necessary call. Choose a relevant act, then move. Give yourself a ceiling of 10 minutes for this opening movement. 10 minutes is not a scientific law and not a universal measure of courage. It is a practical boundary. It prevents the first step from expanding into an ordeal large enough to justify retreat. The objective in this moment is initiation, not total completion. If the act can be completed within that window, complete it. If it requires more time, begin it and secure the exact next appointment with it before you stop. Be watchful. Avoidance can dress itself as preparation. Researching another productivity method does not count when the chosen conduct is practice. Polishing your declaration does not count when the requirement is communication. Consuming more motivation does not count when the requirement is submission or preparation. The act must belong to the identity you named. Now begin. Let discomfort remain. Let the inherited prediction speak if it must. You are not required to silence it. You are required to deny it obedience for this one observable interval. When the movement is complete, write a literal receipt. 3 facts only: what you did, when you did it, and which old prediction you disobeyed. I completed this step at this time. Although the old rule predicted I would retreat, use exact language. Do not inflate the achievement. Do not call initiation victory over every future obstacle. Record what happened. This one act does not prove that you will never hesitate again. It does not establish permanent courage, guarantee the desired result, or erase the conditions that made the old rule persuasive. It proves something narrower and decisive. The inherited absolute no longer possesses uncontested authority. It commanded retreat. You acted otherwise. That is the first fact your chosen identity can honestly claim. No mythology, no borrowed excitement, conduct. Feel the pride that has been earned, but do not build a monument to one moment. Tomorrow the familiar trigger may return, and the old sentence may arrive with it. One receipt opens the record. Repetition must now make that record durable. You have one receipt. What might exist after 30 honest returns? Not 30 perfect days, not 30 desired outcomes, but 30 moments in which the familiar command appeared and chosen conduct answered. That is how you build the counter record. Each morning, place your chosen law at a consistent point of decision. Read it before the day begins, scattering your attention. Then name one proof action for that day, one action, specific and observable. Where practical, begin its smallest relevant movement before passive consumption begins, before messages, feeds, entertainment, or other people's demands occupy the ground on which your decision must stand. Do not merely say who you are. Assign that identity work. At evening, return to the ledger. Record what you completed. Note where the old rule appeared. Then choose the next proof. Keep the language factual. The rule appeared when this occurred. I took this action. Or, if you retreated, the rule appeared, I obeyed it here. My next available return is this. No prosecution. No flattering adjectives. No character sentence. The counter record is dated behavioral evidence. It is not a collection of words such as brave, powerful, worthy, or transformed. Those descriptions may feel encouraging, but they cannot carry the weight assigned to conduct. The identity you trust is the identity for which you have kept receipts. One content pattern reference supplied for this method observed a daily repetition video joining morning self-instruction to deliberate action and identity conditioning. Use that observation only within its boundary. It shows a recurring way such material is framed. It does not independently prove that the routine is effective. Your evidence must remain your own observed behavior, and you will lapse. Understand this before the lapse comes, so the old rule cannot turn one retreat into an identity verdict. When you miss the intended action, follow 4 commands. Name the old rule. Refuse the verdict it attaches to the lapse. Reduce the next action to an honest, proportionate size. Produce a recovery receipt at the next available opportunity. Say, the inherited rule has returned. This lapse is an event, not my identity. I will now take the reduced next action. Then take it. Do not worship the streak. A streak can encourage you, but perfection is too fragile a foundation for self-trust. The greater measure is consistency of return. How quickly do you resume after resistance, error, delay, or disappointment? Every recovery teaches the chosen identity that interruption does not require abandonment. Morning, declare, name, begin. Evening, record, observe, choose again. Lapse. Name, refuse, reduce, return. As these receipts accumulate, the new law need not demand blind belief. It acquires a history. It becomes easier to trust because you have repeatedly witnessed yourself obey it under real conditions. Now gather the inherited rule, the chosen law, the first receipt, and the recovery plan. The final act is not discovery. It is enforcement. Gather the pages before you, the sentence you inherited, the source or experience that first gave it weight, the ledger showing how it recruited retreat, the provisional verdict that denied it unlimited authority, the law you chose, the receipt your conduct supplied. See the whole progression. You named the rule. You traced its behavior. You tested its evidence. You marked it as received. You wrote a replacement you could obey. You spoke it, you acted, you returned. Now ask again. Who taught you what people like you may attempt, request, reveal, endure, or become? Perhaps the lesson came through a person, a group, an environment, or an experience you interpreted before you could examine its meaning. That inheritance may explain the first rule. It does not decide which rule governs the next act. Place the two sentences side by side. Under the inherited sentence, write once more, received, not chosen. Do not erase it. You are not denying your history. You are denying history the right to impersonate destiny. Now underline the conduct-based law you wrote. Beneath it write chosen, tested, to be enforced. This does not mean the old sentence will become silent. It means silence is no longer required before you move. It does not mean doubt has surrendered. It means doubt no longer receives the deciding vote. Read your provisional verdict. Read today's receipt. Let the evidence remain proportionate. One act does not promise every outcome. It establishes that another act is possible. Now speak aloud. That authority was inherited. I do not grant it command over this decision. I choose to be the person who states your conduct when named the familiar trigger. Today I prove that choice by name the completed receipt. My next proof is name the next observable action, and I will begin it now. Say only what you can honor, then honor it. If the next proof can be performed safely and practically now, begin before this address ends. Open what must be opened. Place your hands upon the work. Complete the first meaningful movement. If it cannot be done now, do not leave it floating in intention. State the date, state the time, state the place, state the first visible action. Put that appointment where you will encounter it. Prepare what it requires. Let the schedule itself become today's receipt, and meet it when the named moment arrives. You cannot command selection, approval, payment, recovery, applause, or success. You cannot remove every limit or guarantee that effort will be rewarded. But you can refuse to let an untested sentence exercise unquestioned control over what you do next. That is the responsibility now placed in your hands. Not certainty, not perfection. Enforcement. When the inherited command returns, examine it. Name the law you chose, supply the next act. If you retreat, return, then return again. The belief that governs your life will be the belief your conduct repeatedly obeys. Name your next proof. Fix the time and place if needed. Begin.